Welcome to the Mason Duchatschek Show. And before we jump in, this episode is brought to you by workforcealchemy.com, the place where business owners and executives go to uncover and address profit leaks hidden in their everyday operations. My guest today is Jay Sargeant, author of Shift, the Gift of Reinvention, and he's the founder of the Shift Project. Over the course of 7 very different careers, Jay has learned that reinvention is not something that happens to a lucky few. It's a skill. Through decades of transitions, setbacks, opportunities, and fresh starts, he has uncovered patterns that help people recognize when they've outgrown a chapter of life and what it takes to successfully create the next one. Today, we're talking about reinvention, confidence, identity, opportunity, and why it may never be too late to become someone new. Jay, welcome to the show.
That's great being here. I got to tell you, our interview before you turned the lights on made my day. It's wonderful to hang with you, Mason. Thank you for having me.
We're going to have fun. I hope we're able to hit on a couple of topics we talked about offline, because I think you're dead on with a lot of the things that you've written about. So looking back across 7 careers, what do you understand about reinvention today that you wish you had known much earlier in life?
I've changed very, very, very quickly, but I wish I had even changed more quickly. I'm 78, 3 weeks away from being 79. And so when you take that large lifespan, 7 careers probably isn't as ridiculous as it sounds. The fact that each one of them had nothing to do with one another, and for each one of them, I started with no credentials, no experience, and very often no money. That to me is remarkable. And looking back, what I suggest is there's a moment in everyone's life, and for some people like me, many moments, where all of a sudden, even when you're at the top of your game, many of the reinventions I've made came in moments where I was doing exceptionally well. Not a disaster, not a bad boss, not lack of money, not the compensation, not the company going down. All of those things can happen to all of us in a lifetime. But many times, I would reach a point where I'd say, as good as this is, I'm unhappy and I have no tolerance for emotional pain. I'm a ball player. I played lots of ball in my life. I've been in many fist fights on and on. I'd break your teeth to get an offensive rebound and, all of that. But the moment I'm a little bit unhappy and the unhappiness is sustained, I'm gone. And it doesn't matter how much money I'm making. So I even wish that there were moments where I pulled the plug even sooner, which is really weird for a guy like me to say.
At what point do you think you realized that your life wasn't a collection of random career changes, but a series of intentional reinventions?
Interesting question. I wrote the book, and this is important, I think, to answer your question. I wrote the book because I have 3 daughters, 54, 37, and 33. And they would come over to the house and they would say, Dad, your great grandchildren will never know the Ray Sprinkle story. They'll never know the George Nadaff story. When you're gone, we'll try to remember the stories you've been telling us your whole life, but we're not going to have the richness in them. So can you somehow, some way get these stories written? And in writing the stories, what I realized was there were indeed patterns. There were things going on in all of those reinventions that had a common thread. And there was something to teach. I'm a coach and I'm a teacher and a trainer. I'm not a business person. I've never read a business magazine in my life. I know you told me you went to business school. I'd be the wrong guy in a bit. But so at the end of the day, I'm a teacher. And as I wrote the book, I started to see predictable patterns. Now, you and I both have a background in neurolinguistic programming. You're watching models. And I started to go, oh, there's a model I could teach. And so the book became a moment where I started to say, I could write an original, brand new, late in the game, new class around this information. I don't know if that answers entirely your question, but it's my answer.
Well, you were talking about patterns. Like, what are some of the patterns you noticed?
When I work with people, and you'll hear in some of the stories how sometimes there were large numbers of people, the number one stop, the number one stop. Now, remember, I'm going to give you a line and then I'm going to back it up a little bit. The number one stop when I'm working with anyone is, Jay, I'm not good enough. I don't have the credential to do that.
That
My
drives me crazy.
my mantra is credentials are overrated. Now I'm going to make a caveat. I'm going to clear that up. If you and I, God forbid, got in an automobile accident and they were rushing us to the Mass General Hospital for surgery, we would pray that the doctor went to medical school, had an internship, and was a resident someplace.
Sure.
So obviously, I'm not an idiot. Credentials in some categories are absolutely vital, but I teach entrepreneurship. And in entrepreneurship, it's not relevant very often. So what I'm trying to get, just recently, the reason I'm in this sport outfit is at my late age, I teach champion pickleball players, believe it or not. I got two kids I'm currently teaching who will be on TV this weekend. They're only
Nice.
13 and 14 years old. And this old geezer at age 78 has to go out and rally with these kids and sustain workouts with these kids. Now, I have no credential for doing that. Everyone around me, because pickleball is exploding. There's a whole cottage industry of pay $500 to $1,000 to go to a one-day thing and get a credential so it says you are a credentialed pickleball player. I don't have that degree. I don't have that credential. I wouldn't waste my time. I either create value or I don't. And if I take a student and they get better and they go on a court and someone says, how in God's name did you hit that topspin forehand? I've never seen you hit that shot. They say, Mr. Miyagi, this old geezer on his own pickleball court, taught me how to rub and rotate a ball. I never thought of it that way. And now I have this new stroke. So consequently, I have more students than I have time or energy to service, but I have no credential. And so I'll tell you a real quick story, Mason, if you'll indulge me. When I became a tennis pro without ever owning a tennis racket and ended up being one of the top tennis professionals in the New England area with an academy and a summer camp and 30 pros working for me, a pro shop and a stringing operation. At one moment in time, I became incredibly bored hitting tennis balls. In the seventh year, I had the seventh year itch. And I was standing on the court and I said to myself, I am a glorified construction worker. Now, this is lovely. I'm trying to teach the whole individual. So my juniors are working out with Nautilus when that was a thing. They're doing yoga stretches. I'm bringing in transcendental meditation. I was trying to do it in the most cerebral, spiritual, advanced way possible, but I was still just batting tennis balls all day long. And I asked myself on court 8 at the Charles River Indoor Tennis Club, is this what God put you on the planet to do? Do you really want to be doing this 20 years from now? And the answer was, even though I was making more money than any kid my age should have been making, I walked away from that. And where I walked and the way I did it, and I want everyone to understand, if you're in between trapezes, here comes a big tip for you. I said, how do I get out of here? What do I do next? And what came up for me is I teach the wealthiest, most powerful people in New England. I'm going to call 5 of the key individuals who are powerful and who know me and love me. I'm going to ask for them to spend 15 minutes with me. I'm going to go in front of them and I'm going to say, what do I do next? You know me. Who am I? In the world that you live in, you own a big steel company, and one of them owned, by the way, one of them turned out to be Robert Kraft, the owner of the Boston Patriots, the New England Patriots. I'm dating myself. And so I went in front of these people and they all said, Mason, you're going to kick out of this because I know what you do. They said, you need to sell something, Jay. Your next move is sales, but with your ego, you can't sell pencils. You have to sell large things with big commissions, and you have to sell it in a way that fits your personality construct. I said, well, thank you. And I was very excited, even though I was a little resistant. And they created out of that, 5 meetings came. The meeting that I'm going to share with everyone here, because it's got everything I know loaded into this story, was Mark Roberts, family owned Atlantic Steel, sent me over to meet with George Nadav, the franchise king of the United States, a very wealthy and powerful man owning his own franchise company that he was franchising himself. And he set me up with George. Now, all I knew going to that meeting is that I had no sales experience and no business experience, and certainly no franchise experience. I was going to be in front of a very powerful man. So I said, and you'll get this from NLP pacing technique. I did him the courtesy of going to Simon & Son in Copley Square and buying my first ever blue suit. And I bought a Mark Cross carrying case, very expensive carrying case. I at least wanted to walk through the door in this interview looking the part. Wasn't going to have a whole life in business. I wasn't going to understand franchising in 48 or less hours, but at least I could look the part. When I got to George's office, it was the most exquisitely appointed office I had ever been in. It was as big as my home. I mean, it was massive. He was behind a desk so large, he looked like a Visigoth and Pope Leo combined. I mean, it was quite a visual. And my analysis as I walked towards him is he's not going to take any baloney. This is a serious, powerful dude. And I better meet power with power. So his first question was, hey, kid, Mark Roberts tells me you're a big talent. I hear great things about you. I can't wait to read your resume. Can I see it, please? And I said, George, I don't have a resume. I've never had a resume, and I have no resume. And he said, oh, well, can you talk me through your business experience? I said, I have no business experience at all. In fact, I don't even like business. If I'm at Logan Airport going off on a flight and I'm at the magazine rack, I'm not buying Entrepreneur Success or Fortune magazine ever. I'm buying tennis, golf, Sports Illustrated or sports magazine. So I have no background. And then he said to me, well, what in God's name are you here for, kid? And I said, well, I hear that you sell $250,000 franchises by sending men and women out on the road behind Wall Street Journal ads that qualify people, and you put those speakers in the most prestigious hotels in the United States, and they give a 45 to 60-minute presentation of the franchise offering. Is that your modus operandi, George? He said, yes, that's how we do it. I said, then put me on the team. I'm the best stand-up guy you've ever met. If I'm in front of an audience and you tell me what you want them to do, they will do it when I speak. So he was stunned. And then I knew that he was deliberating, and I stepped into the deliberation and I said, George, I can prove this. Is that your brochure over there? And he had a little trifold brochure. Is that the franchise brochure over there? Yes. I'm going to go into the lobby with this brochure. And in 15 minutes, I'm going to study that little trifold. And then I'm going to come back in and give a presentation. Put all of your sales animals in this big, huge room of yours, partners and executives, put them all in here. And I will show you what I can do. If I'm as good as I think I am, you'll put me on the team. If not, you'll show me the door. Well, I wouldn't be telling you this story, Mason, if it didn't have a happy ending. Back in. And everyone who was on the sales team wanted to murder me. Do you understand? I could feel the animosity. And you and I both know this. I deleted them. I deleted like the drummer in Spinal Tap that keeps exploding. I just made them disappear. I had an audience of one that I cared about, George Nadav. And I went and I did an amazing 8 to 10 minute improvisation, pretending I was a franchise salesperson, doing as best I could to memorize a couple of key words. When it was over, George, God bless him, threw them out of the room, threw everybody out of the room, said, come here, kid. Not one word was accurate. Not one detail was right, but damn, you can speak. That was a great speech. I can clean you up. We can teach you the content, but I want to put you in your blue suit in front of audiences at the Plaza on Central Park South in the Fairmont in San Francisco. And that's, my friend, how I entered sales, but
Wow.
no credential. So I want people to know that's the point. The point is, if you know what you're good at, and by the way, not everyone's going to be mean. I want to be really specific because I'm doing these podcasts. I start to realize there's some holes in my logic. I want everyone who's watching this, maybe reading the book or taking my course. It can be someone who is right now in Akron, Ohio, laying linoleum for another guy, for another guy's truck. You know you're really good. You got a great personality and you're making enough money to just get by. I want that person to understand in 10 years they can own 5 trucks and live in a really nice home in Akron. But the difference between working for someone and owning your own, not just being a speechifying guy like me, everyone can find what they love and dive into it and give themselves the permission to grow in that category. Anyway,
I
everything
love it.
reminds.
I love what you're saying about credentials because it's like if you can do it. I mean, it's like I literally had this conversation with someone who has made a transition recently into the teaching career, education.
Mhm.
Pretty much retired from business, had time, says, I think I can make a difference with young people. This is what I want to do. And surprise, surprise, in that industry, you have to have credentials. Well, there was some organization, I'm butchering the story a little bit, but some organization that's a certification organization. He has to take all these different classes, and he took a pretest. I guess at the end of this class, you have to pass this test with a certain score. And he took it before he even started the class and passed it. So I would think, go do something else. No, you have to take the course because there might be more you can learn. It's in that particular industry, it's so rigid. Like these are the credentials. You must have these credentials. He passes the test before he even takes the course. Yet, well, now you still have to take the course. Like that's one of the reasons I just love entrepreneurship is because common sense is alive and well. And when I hear I listen very carefully to what you're saying, and I want to piggyback on some of it because I don't even think it's what you have the ability to do now, but it's what you're willing to learn how to do. Because it's not just people say, "Oh, I'm not ready yet," which I think in a lot of cases is probably a false assumption. Some cases, maybe not, but with some effort, and like it doesn't have to be easy. It doesn't have to be fast. If you want to do something different and your best isn't good enough, then make your best better. You, you're not a tree. You're not stuck. You can move, you can grow. And I love the entrepreneurial spirit and the things that you're talking about. But like the credentials, I think it's Alex Hormozy that talks about that a lot. He's like, I hope I'm not misquoting him, but the general gist of one of the things I was listening to him talk about was that your ability to produce results, that's your credentials.
Your value.
And I don't care if a guy has a PhD or not. I mean, I know that, you know, and I'm not trying to get into politics here, but I can listen and open my eyes. And I know Charlie Kirk did not have a college degree, but
Mhm.
he was regardless of what side of the political aisle you fall, it's hard to argue that he wasn't incredibly articulate, incredibly knowledgeable, had the ability to apply that knowledge and speak what he felt in a way that could influence others, positive or negatively. My point is he didn't need a college degree or permission to do what he did. And he built a huge organization by anyone's standards, like a huge organization that had tremendous impact one way or another. But my point is, he didn't need credentials. He developed the skill. But I found that fascinating. I know that you write that reinvention is a skill. What are the components of that skill, and why do some people seem to develop it while others remain stuck?
You know, the number one skill in lifetime, in all of our lifetime, if I could wave a wand and give the people I love, certainly I've given it to my 3 daughters. They're really good at what I'm about to share with everyone. The number one skill that changes the most in someone's life and in the arc of someone's life, the potential of someone's life is communication skills. Because whatever you're doing, you are 24 hours a day. If you're alive and awake, you're communicating something good, something bad. And so, from my standpoint, the first move that I make when I'm doing a training program or I'm doing one on one work is I upgrade communication skills. And you're going to get the biggest kick out of this next little share because it's something that you and I have in common, Mason. As good as I did after George gave me the opportunity to learn franchise sales. 1 year into the experience, I walked through his door. He looked up and he said, "Kid, I know what you're going to say. You're leaving me. You're going to go into business and develop your own franchise development company. Am I right?" I said, "Oh, George, you're right." He said, "Come here. When I met you, I knew that I was leasing, renting, not owning. I knew that there'd be a day when you'd walk out the door. You have done everything I asked you to do. You're really good at this. And just know the following. I respect you. I respect what you've done. And if you go form your own franchise development company and have any kind of a problem, you skin your knee, you fall down, the light is always on here for you. You can always come back. Your Uncle George loves you. And I respect what you've done. Come back if you have to. I hope you
Nice.
don't, but come back if you have to. By the way, I've used that over the last 40 years with many employees. Do you understand? People who leave,
Sure.
great talents, and I love them, and some of them come back. I'm working with someone right now that I worked with 30 years, and they're back in my life. So anyway, thank you, George. He's in heaven now. So I left George and I formed my own franchise development company, and we eventually went crazy. I can't get into that story, but eventually we found a huge client and we launched a big national company and went from 1 unit to 154 units. And then, for reasons, inexplicable reasons, God's reasons, not mine, somebody bought the company and disbanded my division. At the height of the most glorious campaign of my life, a lawyer calls me into Century City and says the business is less than 48 hours. It's over. They're shutting it down. They bought the company. They don't want this division of the company. You're gone. You're finished. That was my moment to call George. That was a big, bad moment. So I call George and I pretend just to say, Happy New Year. He goes, "Kid, you're fishing. You called because you fell down, and that's okay. Guess what? This is so fortuitous. I am creating a brand new franchise called Boston Chicken." Became a big deal. I'm launching it out of New York City, and I want you to be the president, and I want you to drive the franchise development side. And I will send you, wire you money tomorrow. I'll bring you and your new bride across the country, put you in mid-Manhattan, put you up, take the furniture that you have in storage, bring it out here. We'll create a whole life. There's commissions and equity, and we're going to be big. Do you want me to send you the money? And I said, yeah. Now, I go to my bride. She was only 22. I was 37 at the time. My bride was 22. And I went to her and I said, "We're okay. Uncle George is sending money. It's a great offer. We're going to be in the most exciting city in the United States with culture and opera and theater. We're going to have a beautiful place in mid-Manhattan." She had never been to New York. She was all excited. And the moment those words came out of my mouth, Mason, I started to dissemble them. I started to get unhappy. I didn't tell her right away because I knew it would be very disappointing. George wired me, this is a long, long time ago, wired me $10,000, which was like now 30 or 40 or 50, God knows whatever. It was a big chunk of change. And I went to Lee, who's now in heaven, my Lee, and I said, "Sweetie, I know this may sound disappointing, but I don't think I want to be a chicken empire builder. I don't think I want to talk about chicken, and I don't think I want to stay in franchising. I'm a little bit, I don't know. I don't know." And she humored me. And for 2 days, I had this existential crisis. I've got this stable thing, and I never choose the stable thing. I've never had, in quotes, a position. Everything has been early development on me. And I'm having this internal conversation. She goes to bed. We're at the Oakwood Garden Apartments in Marina Del Rey in transition because we had sold a piece of property and we're in transition. And I go down to the swimming pool, Olympic swimming pool, 11 o'clock at night. I'm all alone sitting on a chaise lounge in between trapezes, and a bald-headed Jewish guy in Bermuda shorts with a baseball cap sits down on the chaise lounge next to me. Now, there's 250 empty chaise lounges, and this guy sits next to me. And he says, I notice that you're thinking, a penny for your thoughts. And I said, oh, my friend, I am the most chatty. If you look in the dictionary under the word loquacious, my picture's there. Are you sure you want this? He said, unload, kid. I got nothing to do. Tell me your story. 10, 15 minutes later, I've told him the deliberations, the pros, the cons, what I'm resisting. And he gets up and he leaves, and he comes immediately back with John Grinder and Richard's Bandler's.
Wow, I know who those guys are.
Yeah, the seminal work of neurolinguistic programming. It was called Frogs into Princes. He brings me this book that is so beaten up. He must have read it 100 times. It's got words on every page, underlined. The spine is broken. And he says to me, kid, this is what you should do with the rest of your life. Literally, that was the sentence. And I want you to read the book now. I'm going to sit here, read the book. I read the first 11 pages, turn to tell him that I am blown away.
And I know why.
And he is gone. I never saw that guy again. I never saw that guy. That guy's gone, leaves me the book. I read exactly 11 pages and I race and I wake up Lee and I say, we're not going to New York. We're sending back the money. And I am going to be an NLP trainer. We're going to build an empire around the first 11 pages of this book. God bless her. She was a kid. Do you understand? And she loved me dearly. She just said, oh boy, how exciting, whatever. That moment, the next day, I want people to understand what I had to do. In my underwear on a card table with an Apple IIe, because that was the period of time that wasn't, I think the Mac was just coming out in that moment.
I remember the 2E.
Apple IIe. I'm sitting and I created an empire, an outline for an empire. And I called up Jim Jordan of Miracle Auto Paint, a franchise client of mine in the Bay Area. And I said, Jim, I'm doing something different. I'm a master NLP trainer, and I'm going to teach your sales force. They had about 100 people who sold paint jobs. I said, you put your paint job salespeople in a room next Saturday. I'm going to charge you a heavily discounted price of $5,000 for a day of training, and it's going to increase sales efficiency. And I just picked a number, 35%. He said, Jay, whatever you do, we want to be part of because you're a good guy. You've done us well. And I bet you it's going to be a whole bunch of fun. Come on up. From that $5,000 account, I created 11 to corporate America. And again, what I want people to understand is I chose the path less taken because on one path, I had to go against my nature. I was unhappy. Again, I had no tolerance for emotional or psychological pain. I knew that if I did that, I'd be successful, but it would be compromising. My need for freedom and autonomy. So, by the way, I'm not for everybody. I'm looking for people. When people say, well, can you teach this to everybody? No, I have to find people who are hungry and ambitious and want more and are willing to take certain risks to get more of what they want in this lifetime.
So how do you know when you've outgrown a role, a business or a career, or even an identity that once served you well?
For me, it's emotional. For me, it's a feeling tone. For me, it's like, my God, do I have to? I mean, listen, I woke up this morning and I could not wait to meet you. That's a sign that I'm doing what I should be doing. Everyone's heard the old canard. If you find what you love and do what you love, you never work another day the rest of your life. I am the living symbol of that thought form because I must be doing what I enjoy. I must be making a contribution in a way that utilizes what God has given me. I got one skill and one skill only, Mason. I mean, I have a number of skills, of course. I'm being simplistic, but I love to speak the English language. I've been telling stories that influence people since I was 8 years old. I got through the oldest public high school. My high school was created in 1635, 1 year before Harvard University, Boston Latin School. And when I went into Boston Latin School, the headmaster, now when I went into the auditorium with 1,000 seventh graders, over our head was Ben Franklin, Samuel Adams, everyone, John Hancock, everyone who had written the Constitution, signed the Declaration of Independence, was staring down at us little boys. And then this authoritarian gets up there. We used to call the guy who ran the school was the headmaster. It was a whole Latin classical model, right? And the headmaster gets up and he says, "Look left, look right." Little boys, we look left, look right. He said, "Only one of you will be here 6 years from now. 1,000 of you enter. We will flunk 700 of you out of this school. And the only way you'll get through this is if you commit to 3 hours or more of homework a night." Now, remember, I'm a little boy, I'm a seventh grader, and I'm thinking in my head, not going to happen. I'm so smart. I remember thinking, I'm so smart. I did so well in grammar school. I'll do virtually nothing and I'll get through this whole experience. And you know what? I was committed. I did virtually nothing. But you know what got me through that experience? I had to get up for 6 years in a row, 6 classes a year, and give a speech about why I didn't do my homework. I got so good at storytelling. I honed the one skill that created the entire rest of my life. The throughput of everything I've ever done has to do with presentations.
See, that's a theme that I've heard from you, and I'm going to share a story back with you. So
Please.
I paid for college with Army ROTC, and I was at Fort Leonard Wood at the U.S. Army Engineer School after I graduated college, and a good chunk of my class was comprised of West Pointers. I was ROTC, but a good chunk of the guys that went through with me came from West Point. And I guess at least back then, boxing was a required class because a lot of guys had never been in a fight.
Mhm.
And West Point insisted that this was part of it. And they told me the story of this one dude who had terrible footwork, had terrible defense. He didn't really move well, and he frustrated the coaches to no end. But he was the champ, which probably frustrated him more because they're sitting there saying, "Hey, here's how you stand. Here's how you move your footwork. Here's how you move your head." Didn't matter. This guy had one thing that he could do better than everyone else, and that was knock people out. This dude could hit so hard, he would just wait for his shot and knock him out. And he did it to every single person that stepped in the ring with him. And there's something to be said for listening to coaches, but the coaches are telling all of the guys the same stuff. And this guy stuck to what made him great. I hit harder than anyone. No one can take my punch. I'm going to pick my shot and I'm going to walk through this guy. And he did it to every single one of them. And when I hear, and he didn't worry about the other stuff. He didn't care about his footwork. He didn't care about his defense. He did not care because he knew the one thing he could do better than anyone else was hit hard. And what I've heard from you is, the one thing consistently that you've been able to do is communicate and speak in front of groups. And you've doubled and tripled down on that. And I think that one of the things that inspires me about this conversation, and I'll tell you another quick story. I was sitting on a surfboard in 1997 in Waikiki Beach, talking to a kid. And I grew up in Missouri. There's no surfing in Missouri. So this was my first time on a surfboard. And I'm sitting on beautiful aqua blue waters. I could feel the sun radiating on my skin, the gentle breeze coming, blowing across my board. I could look down and see the bottom of the ocean. The water was aqua clear. It was beautiful. I can remember this like it was yesterday, and this was 1997. And I'm sitting here next to this kid with long hair, probably 19 years old, asking what he does, where he's from. He's like, "Oh, I live here." Because me and a couple buddies, we rent an apartment and we park cars for cash and we surf all the time. And I was just like, man, I wish I could come out here and do this every day. He's like, you could. All you have to do is move. And I realized that he was right. I, I'm sitting here learning a lesson from a kid who's parking cars at 19 years old because what mattered to him was I need to eat, I need to sleep, I need a shelter over my head, and I want to surf. And at that point, it's like he figured out how to do it, but he was right. All I had to do was move. Now I chose not to, but I understand that he was right. And I'm curious, in your opinion, what should someone do when they know they need a change, but they don't yet believe they're capable of succeeding in the next chapter?
Yeah, find something they love. Find something they love. Don't think about making the change. Don't think about making money. Don't think about the consequences. I'll give you a really quick, I've got an absolutely spot on story for you. I was raised by serial entrepreneurs. My mom was a working class girl that worked at Filene's Basement selling clothing. My father delivered papers for the Boston Record American at night, dumped off bundles of paper from the back of a truck in front of drugstores. And in the daytime, he worked for Boston Redevelopment. So the two of them were busy morning, noon, and night and broke all the time. My father had two full-time jobs and made $7,500 a year. Okay. But my folks had a dream, and the dream was it wasn't sophisticated. It wasn't to be abundant. They wanted to be rich. They wanted to get out of Brighton, Massachusetts and move one town over to Brookline where the rich people were. It motivated them all the time. And they were thinking about a hustle, a side gig all the time. And the way they entered that loop was really simple, very simple. Everyone catch it. They would find something that they cared about, and then they would represent it and sell it and try to develop it. They didn't know about P&Ls. They didn't know about fixed costs. They just fell in love with something. So in my house, God bless them, they sold mambo and cha-cha lessons in the living room. My mother, a Jewish housewife, sold how to cook Chinese food in the dinky little kitchen. They sold shoes in the living room. They buy black pumps and put rhinestones on the toes. And I was the shoe runner. I'd run into the bedroom and go get a 7.5 for a lady, and we'd put it on her feet. They always had something, and it always evolved from what they cared about. One day, my mom went into a beautiful store on Cape Cod, in Dennis on Cape Cod, and saw this art glass produced by this guy named Bill Seidenstricker. She went gaga over the art glass. They love lovely looking things, my folks. She found that glass. She went to the owner, not the first time. She came back a few times, but third time, I believe, she said to Bill Seidenstricker, I love your glass, and I will take it to Boston. My husband and I will load it up, consign it to us, and we will build you a whole market you don't have in Boston. You handle the Cape with your beautiful retail store. We will sell the glass in Boston. That move bought my brother 4 years of Harvard University. My kid brother, entire Harvard education got paid by that glass business. My father, to the day he died, loved neckwear. My father delivered newspapers with a necktie. He found in New York City a manufacturer selling it to the kids that sell in Times Square ties for $10. He followed one of those kids back to a manufacturing facility in the garment district, cold called the owner of the manufacturing facility and bought ties for $3 and sold them for $10 all over the city of Boston. Now, this didn't make my folks millionaires, but it gave them A, Harvard University money, huge, and B, my father enjoyed every hour of sharing those neckties. I have 200, I'll never wear another necktie as long as I live, but I still have them upstairs. So what I say to people is find something you love. Find something you love.
That is
And
great advice. And like two things that like I'm really glad we're having this conversation because I look back, like I wasn't raised by serial entrepreneurs. but though I look back and one of the things I'm very grateful to my parents for is they told me no. My parents provided everything I needed, but they did not provide me with everything I wanted. And if I wanted something else, at first it was save for this or save for that. Well, but if I want it now, well, then I need to earn additional money and have money set aside. So I learned very early that it's not just save and allowance, it's find a way to earn something. And I had lemonade stands in the subdivision when they were building houses. I knocked on doors and pulled weeds and mowed grass. I knocked on doors and shoveled snow in the winters. I made my money. I had my first car paid for before I turned 16.
Me too.
And I went out and mowed, I knocked on the doors of real estate agencies who had people who owned homes that didn't live there anymore and the grass was growing, but they couldn't really sell houses easily if they're knee high or waist high weeds. And I just did it for them and they sent the bill to the owners and I had the niche on that market. I hired people from my cross country team to show up who were 16 to pick me up because I could get the business. They would pick me up. I would pay them to mow. And I had my whole cross country team working with me. So that was, and mowing grass and pulling weeds was not something I was passionate about. But as I got older, but that instilled the entrepreneurial spirit in me because it left desire there. Now, what I wanted to do, and I wasn't old enough to get a job, so I made it happen. But I look at my core business. As we've mentioned offline, I own a company that provides skill, attitude, and personality-based pre-employment tests to help companies identify high risk applicants and high reward applicants and how to engage the best and retain them. It's basically like having an operator's manual on your people, but I digress. But how did I get into that business? I worked for a national sales trainer and motivational speaker right out of college. And we primarily focused on the automotive industry. And if you can imagine, I was 23 years old, 24 years old, selling sales training to automotive car dealerships. And those guys had more years of selling experience than years I'd been alive. And you can imagine that it was not an easy sell for me because every single one of them wanted to test me every single day. Because if I'm representing a sales training company, they're going to put me through the ringer. I'm not interested. The price is too high. I want to think about it. They wanted to see if I had a response because they're not going to entrust my boss to teach their salespeople to sell if they couldn't teach me to do it. So I was tested every single appointment, every single day. And these people really weren't even objecting. They just wanted to see what I had. And I came across a couple of objections that I was not prepared for. One of them was, Mason, do you have any idea what the turnover is in this industry? Do you know what it's like to try to keep car salesmen? You go, half of the people, we don't want to invest in training these people. Half of them are going to be out of the business in a year. Another good chunk of them are going to be working for our competitors. So I don't necessarily know I want to train them. And the ones that are going to be good are going to rise to the top anyway. And I'm like, and I found a nice way to say it without being a smart aleck. But I was like, well, what's your alternative? To have untrained people stay?
Yeah.
But what I understood was they had a legitimate beef. They said, Mason, using our traditional employee selection methods, we've hired good people. The problem is using those exact same methods and processes, we've hired people we wish we hadn't. And the only thing we've learned is that the methods that we're using to predict success in the workplace aren't working, and certainly aren't working consistently. But what can you do? And they went right down the laundry list. I said, Mason, we can do background checks, but that only shows that someone's been caught and successfully prosecuted. What about the people who did things they weren't supposed to but weren't caught or weren't prosecuted successfully? Or, hey, we do drug tests, but that's a liquid intelligence test. It says right there on the application, we do drug tests. So all they need to do is stay clean for 30 days. So how's that going to help? We can ask for references, but who's going to give us names of people that are going to say they're lazy and unreliable and unskilled? Hardly anybody. And people lie in applications and resumes all the time. And unless you're Marvin the mind reader, you don't know what the truth is. Yet you're still expected to make an informed decision on half of it, which is fiction. So the odds are stacked against him. Like, well, what can you do? And I came across an article in Selling Power magazine that featured a study by Michigan State University School of Business on predicting success in the workplace that said pre-employment testing was the number one predictor of future success by a 3-to-1 margin over interviews, past experience, and education. And I was like, and now that was something I was passionate about because that was an obstacle that I didn't know how to overcome. I'm sitting here talking to people who were very good sales managers and general managers of car dealerships that knew how to sell, and they realized that their job security and income was no longer tied to their ability to sell. They had to rely on other people. So instead of me being a threat, which I was before, what's this? Why does the boss want a outside sales training company in here teaching our people? Sales manager sitting there thinking, that's my job. I don't want this guy in there.
Mhm.
I don't want this company in there. Now, the owner or general manager might think differently, and that way we did get in there. But my point was when I stopped being a threat to them, and it's like, hey, man, I can help you get people that are worthy of your time and worthy of your energy. Do you want to waste your time training for someone for a job that they're not cut out for? You're asking someone to come to work every day and be something they're not? Or do
Wow.
you want to invest your time and energy training people and developing people who are custom built for this, that love it and can't wait to get more? Because if you get a whole team of the right people and they're in the right seats, your job is easy. Your job security is set. You're going to make money and you're going to make it look simple. However, if you get the wrong people, if you hire and you hope, baby, you're rolling the dice, and that's an awful stressful way to live. And that was something I was super passionate about. And I went out and I researched hundreds of, well, I mean, not hundreds, but a lot of skill, attitude, and personality based assessment tools built by industrial psychologists. And I, just like your parents, I reached out to the industrial psychologist. His name was Neil Johnston, Advanced Psychometrics, San Antonio, Texas. I said, I love your stuff. I think it is amazing. It is accurate. It is easy. It is applicable. It is versatile. I want to sell you. And I bought a distributorship and I started selling that for, and I did it for years. And I eventually bought the company from him. But when you were talking about that, like I literally, it was Fred Smith in college. They talked about the guy who founded FedEx. He said he used to go to parties and listen to what people complained about. And he
Mm.
built his business. I worked for a guy by the name of John Hauser, who was my first real sales manager. He was a former IBM executive. And he said, your job is to find the customer's itch and scratch it. And I was sitting there in front of prospects every day who were telling me where they were itching. Like, we can't get the right people in here. Training wasn't their problem. Getting the right people in there to develop was the right problem. A lot of them did know how to train and develop their people, but they didn't have the right ones. And I could solve that problem. But like you said, I went out and I sought out the industrial psychologist who built that. And I said, I love your stuff. I want to sell it. I got a question for you. You often talk about the power of small moments. Looking back, what appeared insignificant at the time, but ended up changing the direction of your life?
I got two choices here. So it's door number A or door number B. I'm going to pick door number A. I got invited to a cocktail party on 171 Heath Street in Brookline, Massachusetts, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the Boston area. I sat at that dinner table. The dinner table was $40,000 worth of Italian marble, as an example. I didn't want to go to that dinner party because, as we discussed in rehearsing before we began, I'm the last guy in the world that wants to go hang around with people at a cocktail or dinner party. It's just not my style. But I knew that I needed to do something because I teach entrepreneurs, for God's sakes, get off of the Barker Lounger, take a bad gig, do something that's counterinstinctual, but move, do something. So I had the franchise development company and we only had dinky little clients. We weren't doing that well. So I go to this fabulous dinner party in Brookline, Massachusetts, and by divine intervention, not on purpose, didn't move the cards around, didn't know who was sitting at this table, about 20, 30 people there. The guy I'm sitting next to, now, I don't know how old you are, Mason, but probably you don't know this name. I'm sitting next to Mitch K. Poor. And in 1981, there were only 4 computers: Ataris, Trash 80s, TRS 80s from Radio Shack, Commodore 64s, and Apple IIe's. There was no IBM yet. They hadn't entered the microcomputer area.
I had the Commodore 128.
Okay. There were only 3 pieces of software in 1981. The beginning of Microsoft as a word processor, the beginning of database management, DBase 2, Ashton Tate's DBase 2, and something called VisiPlot to VisiCalc became Lotus 123. I'm sitting next to the developer of Lotus 123. I don't know anything about what he's talking about, but I do what I teach everyone to do. And you know this NLP technique. I shut up, which is not easy for me because once I get going, and I turn to the guy next to me, who's Mitch, and I say, what do you do for a living? Tell me about yourself. And he describes Lotus 123, yada, yada, yada. And I am blown away. I'm going, oh my God, there's something going on. This sounds like a huge wave. So I listen to his entire story and I say, now this is important. This is my transition moment. This is a teaching moment. When he's done, clearly he's loaded, he's got money, he's important. I turn to him and I say, this is incredibly exciting what you've shared. Let me tell you about me a little bit. Now, by the way, I'm going to make one more point that you may love. After asking him all those questions and keeping him going for 25 or 30 minutes, the law of reciprocity from Cialdini's influencing chapter 4 kicked in. All of a sudden, he got that look on his face where he said, oh my God, I'm talking about me and only me. What do you do? That's my moment. I say, I own the most powerful franchise development company in the United States. We find early properties and turn them into market leaders. What I just heard you say, what would I do with that information? If you owned my franchise development company, what would you be looking for in this emerging space? He says to me, Jay, there's thousands of brand new computer lands being developed right now as we speak. They only care about selling a $5,000 box. They don't want nothing to do with software. Develop a software retail chain and put it right across the street from every computer land, and you'll make a fortune. And I went, oh my God, do you know where they are? Does this exist yet? He said, well, I sell software to the only ones that exist. There's one here in Boston, there's one in Washington, D.C., there's one in Chicago, and there's one in Los Angeles. That night, I had limited resources. I'm being kind. I was broke. I was spending more money to run my little company than I was making. So I was going into savings every day, and savings were diminished. But that night, entrepreneurs of the world, listen to this. I booked plane tickets the next day. I went to the Boston location, terrible. I took a plane to Washington, D.C., walked in cold, terrible. Went to Chicago, awful. And eventually on a Saturday afternoon, I ended up in Los Angeles. And I walked into a 1,550 square foot retail store on Pico Boulevard in the west side of Los Angeles. And I saw something that none of the other stores had. Now, they weren't Bloomingdale's, so there wasn't exquisite merchandise. There wasn't signage. It didn't have branding in it. But at least it had 4 card tables with all of the 4 computers, and that had 50 to 75, what we called back in the day, copter heads from Caltech, standing around playing Pong and playing with the only software that existed in the world. I went over to the kid behind the counter who looked like a skateboarder to me. And I said, I am Jay Sargeant. I'm a kingmaker. I own a franchise development company. I'm looking for the one retail software store in America that I will make the leader in this nation and the world. Who should I be speaking to? I need to find an owner. He said, well, I said, are you a decision maker? He said, no, I only own a little piece. I said, well, who owns this? He said, George Tate. Does everyone remember where I am with this story? George Tate is Ashton Tate, one of the 3 developers of the only software in 1981 in the entire world of PC computer software. I almost had a heart attack with joy. I said, well, where is George? He said, well, George is in Venice. I said, well, give me the address. I take a cab. This is Venice before it became gentrified. This is Venice with dope addicts and surfers and completely the disarray. I'm in a cab because remember, I'm not familiar with LA at the moment. I'm in a cab and I keep saying to the cab driver, are you sure we're going to this address? I'm imagining we're going to go to Bel Air, that we're going to a mansion next to Magic Johnson's house. I'm imagining a prepossessing character, handsome, dashing powerhouse in a beautiful mansion. And we're in this dumpy neighborhood. He drops me off in front of an apartment house. I walk up a flight of stairs. I bang on a screen door, and a guy comes out with no shirt on, a cigarette hanging from his lip, a big belly over his gym shorts. And I go, I'm looking for George Tate of Ashton Tate. And he goes, you got him. I'm here. Hi. Well, who are you? I go inside, and 1 hour later, I have the exclusive marketing rights to that franchise development on a yellow pad of paper.
Nice.
So you just don't know which small moment is the opening of the crack. I use the metaphor crack in the cosmic conscious, go towards the light. If you got a sliver, run towards it. Just go. So that cocktail party led to that. We sold 154 of those $250,000 franchises in 18 months, made them the market leader. So
So, as we're wrapping up, first of all, I'm very thankful for your time and whatnot. I got just a couple quick questions for you. Do you have any quick insights about how people can become better at recognizing these pivotal moments while they're happening instead of just seeing them through hindsight?
yeah, if I'm being honest, to me, it's intuitive.
Okay, fair enough.
For me, it's just a question of, I mean, look what happened to you. You found exactly what you were looking for by accident. And when you got passionate about it, you went and did the research. So from my standpoint, you just never know where the clues are going to be, where the breadcrumbs are
You
that
got to
lead.
pay attention and you got to listen to what you pay attention and listen. Like I listened to my customers. I heard what their frustration was. I could see it in their face. Just like the desperation of hire and hope. It's worth throwing stuff up against the wall and hoping something sticks. And it was desperation and apathy, combination of desperation and apathy. And you got to try something. And there was a better way, and they just didn't know what it was. And I went and found it, brought it to them. So, if there was only one piece of advice you could give to anyone listening, what would be the most important piece of advice you could offer them and why?
Do what you love.
Fair enough.
Find something you love, explore it completely, have the patience to love it over a long time. I never expect quick results. I've been around way too long. I've had a lot of con men show me how to become wealthy on an Excel spreadsheet. Excel spreadsheet wealth. I want to see the first sale. Let's make the first dollar. Let's take a look at, is this getting enriched over the next 6 months? I'm building something brand new. You know that. I'm building something called the Shift Project Academy, and I'm going to offer the world a $99 course on how to take that spark and turn it into a masterpiece. How
So,
to
how
make
do
it
people connect with you? How do they learn about this and learn more if they want to? If they want to learn more about you, what you do, what are the best ways for them to connect? Where should they go?
one place, the Shift Project Academy. I'm sure you'll show them that
I
link.
will.
This, and I we're 35 days old. The book just got published. Everything is brand new. But I want to tell you something really important. This is a great point on your point, by the way. I went to the bride. I'm remarried. My wife sent me an angel. She told me on her deathbed she would send me a wife because I need a wife. I love going to Costco and buying an avocado more than going to Paris. Do you understand? I'm that married guy. I love being married. So I got my new wife and I said, we're going to do this and we're going to spend money for 6 months to a year. We won't get, maybe a miracle will happen and we'll get into the black sooner, but you got to find what you love and then be patient enough to let it grow. Do you know what I do all day long? I think about meeting you, Mason. I think about these podcasts. I think about, I've attracted a couple people on spec. I can't afford, I'm not paying anyone any salaries, but they know that I've made 50 millionaires in this lifetime. I developed $1 billion business in my backyard. So I have a track record of creating success and I bring people together. But here's what I know, because I love this project so much, I think about it all the time. I'm still teaching pickleball and coaching, and I'm still somebody's daddy and somebody's husband, and I'm still watching Netflix at night like every other person in the United States, on and on. I have a regular life, but there's a part of me that all the time is thinking about the Shift Project Academy. Reinvention. I'm creating a brand new online course. When I'm through with you, I'm going to go back to it because I love it. No, I don't need a structured environment. I don't need a boss. If you love something, give it the time to develop, think about it and let it mature over time.
Well,
That's my
I've bet you've got a huge market for it because there's a bunch of people watching and listening right now that are in jobs that they don't like, and maybe they're scared or don't know what the next step would be. And a lot of them are probably sweating AI right now, like, what's this going to do to my job? And was it Ben Franklin says, wise is a man who fixes his roof before it rains.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, there's a lot of people out now right now probably, and I think it was Mark Twain that said, when you need a friend, it's too late to make one. So now might be a good time to start exploring some of the things that you're talking about. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to invite you on today, because I really think that there are a lot of people that are on the cusp of making a necessary change, and they just need that little bit of encouragement or that little bit of direction, or they're just a little bit more. And the alternative is to sit around and become a victim of economic changes that hit because of AI, or a company gets bought out, or things that are completely outside of their control. So I am thankful for your time. I'm thankful for your wisdom. And I hope that everyone listening and watching today learned as much and enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you so much, Jay.
Thank you, Mason. Just
It's been a
wonderful.
pleasure.